What's up, guys? How the heck are you doing? Welcome to our second writing session. Uh, how's the video quality look? That is the biggest takeaway for today is, um, how's the video quality? Because last week it was a little iffy, but this week I did a couple different things to see if I could get it to look a little bit crispier, a little bit sharper. Um, Let me see what the playback looks like here. So tonight we are going to be writing a little bit. We're going to be working on the outline for the wraparound story of my anthology that I'm writing called Hell's Night. The wraparound story is essentially the story that introduces the other three stories. If you didn't watch the last live stream or you haven't watched any of my previous videos, I want to go ahead and just run through real quick what the anthology is about, as well as what the wraparound story actually is. So, the anthology Hell's Night, it's about it's about this the wraparound story. Let me go ahead and start there. So, Hell's Night, it's a wraparound story. The introduction story is this antique dealer and this young couple. They go into his antique shop, and when they go into his antique shop, they're shopping for furniture and just things to furnish their first house. And as they're working their way through the shop, they're picking up different things. The antique dealer is sort of this decrepit old man, sort of eccentric, and he just starts striking up conversation with them. So as they're walking around, they're picking up different things, and he starts telling them stories. And the stories he tells them are stories, the three stories that are going to be contained in the film itself. So, um, last week, if you haven't watched yet, then you know that one of the stories has already been shot and completed, and it's already been released on YouTube. It's here available on my YouTube channel. It's called The Butcher. Now, I've put a lot of thought into this over the last week or so, and I'm not sure if I want to include The Butcher in the anthology. I'm thinking about maybe just writing three new stories. And the reason for that is The Butcher was an excellent film, but I don't sort of want to regress and include a past film. I think I might just want to write three new pieces of material. That seems like the better way for me to go. So I think what we need to start on is we need to start figuring out, do we want to which three stories we need to tell. We talked about concepts last weekend, and then how we want to tie them all together, because I think it's important to tie the three stories together. So, like I mentioned before, you have an anthology, and a lot of times in your anthology, you'll see that the three stories, they all tie together in some way. So, figuring out how they tie together is going to be the interesting part. Now, coming over here to the computer, we're going to go ahead and we're going to set up the screenwriting software. We want to start writing, like I said, one of our stories tonight, and this is going to be the wraparound story. So the introduction of our main story. So let's get. I'm moving away from Celtex as a screenwriting software, and that's because I've used them for years and years and years, probably about 10 years or so, but I'm never really working on more than one project at a time using their software. Now, um, I am, though, going to be working on two or three different projects tonight, or just in general for this film, this anthology. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to be able to jump from project to project. So um, I'm going to move away from Celtex because they're sort of honestly price gouging people. I would rather just use a different software. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a little bit and So I'm checking out Writer Duet. I've used this a little bit in the past, and I think I liked it because there's this one, there's Fade In, and then there is Fountain. Um, and then there's also Highland. Now, Highland was created by John Augustine, who is a famous screenwriter. So I may move to his software. I'm just not sure yet. We're gonna try writing in this. Um, so starting out, like I said, we need to come up with an outline. Today's biggest accomplishment will be an outline for that wraparound story. So, once we get an outline going, then we can really start drilling down some of the main story beats and really just putting the script together. So, um, tonight we're going to work on the outline, and then we are going to probably next Friday next Friday we're probably going to go and actually start working on the script based upon tonight's outline. So I think the video quality looks a little bit better this week. So I'm stoked on that. So as of right now, it looks like it's okay. So maybe hardwiring in is the way to go. Let me check this out here. Give me just a minute while I mess with a few things, guys, and get everything set up. I'm running a little bit behind. Got caught up with dinner and stuff like that. So running a little bit behind. I was going to have everything set up, but give me just a minute to get some things going. Want to make sure I'm live on Twitch, and I am. Make sure I'm live over here on Twitter. I am live on Twitter. Cool. So all right, so if you saw the thumbnail, that is one of the other antique dealer pieces of AI generated artwork that we came up with. I sort of like that one actually, but to bring it back, one of the main components of this story that we want to write about the wraparound is going to be this guy here. Let me share it to you real quick. So as we're writing this, keep this gentleman in your mind. This is sort of the overall vibe we're going with, the overall look, right? So the outline that we're going to be writing is going to have this man involved. So you've got one of four. It doesn't really matter which one that we use. I mean, they all essentially look alike. So we may write in notes. May write our outline in notes. So let me bring notes up. I got that ready. Because, like I said, moving away from Celtics, it's not really allowing me to have any outline, like templates or anything in there. So we may just write in notes, and this will probably be where we write for the night for our outline, and then we'll just drill this down into our actual script beats and stuff like that next Friday. So before we get into this, does anybody have any questions about why you may need an outline, or does anybody out there write screenplays and maybe have input on do you use an outline or do you not use an outline? Feel free to comment. Feel free if you have any questions about the overall idea of the script. And I don't know, let's just conversate. Let me know if you got anything that you wanna chat about or anything that you wanna talk about. So there's this down tempo music here. Don't really like that. We're gonna change it. This software you see here is Restream. This is just a streaming software that you can see actually on my PC screen. And the reason I have this view is so you can see what's on the screen uh, in this format, and you can also see it as we're writing. So we're gonna make a checklist here, and this is how we're gonna do this. So just using the Apple Notes app, because this will send this to all my devices, like I talked about before on my channel. And that way, when I'm on the go and I'm on my phone or something like that, I'll be able to refer back to this outline if I want to add anything or change anything, or just look back at it and see how I feel about the outline, the beats, and all that good stuff. So um, let's go ahead and we're just gonna start just freestyling this. We're gonna fill this in, and we're probably gonna go back and we're probably gonna delete some stuff as we go. Feel free to comment. But this, like I said, this is gonna be a writing session here. So um, let's get to it. There's supposed to be a little bit of ambient music playing. I don't know if it's gonna kick in or not. I'm not hearing anything. Hang on. Normally, I would have some music on. I'll listen to scores. I'll listen to uh, whatever type of music that I feel like the is gonna benefit the script. So if it's like a horror film, like for The Butcher, I was listening to a lot of punk music. That's generally what I listen to. Helps me get in the mindset of the characters. Same with this. You know, normally I would listen to something a little different, but royalty-free tracks are ass, and I'm just trying to see what they have built into this software because I need to listen to something as I write. I don't know if I like this down tempo stuff or not, but it's something, so we're gonna listen to it as we write. All right, here we go. I'm not sure if they decide to check out this one antique shop in general because maybe it's the only one in town, or maybe it's just the last one they stop at. Um, you could tell all of that through dialogue, as like, let's say, they're in the car and they essentially are driving around, and maybe one of them is like, hey, are you about ready to stop for the day? And let's say the male is like, no, well, we've got one more shop. We didn't find what we're looking for. We don't want to continue pushing off looking for furniture. Let's check out one more place. And so they decide to pull into this last antique shop. Or maybe they only have one antique shop in their town. So either one can be decided of why they decide to pull into this specific one. Like I said, that can be told through dialogue. And when we're writing the script, what I'll do is I'll put this right here as a reminder: the only antique shop in town. question mark. And then say couple enter the dark, dimly, let's say dimly lit we want it to be dank, dimly lit, because we don't want it to be in good shape. Dimly lit antique shop. Because remember, we want it to look like this here. This is what we're describing. I can figure out this damn software here. All right, so it's kind of stupid the way that this works. Okay. All right, there's our notes. We need to go to 3. Okay, I'm trying to figure this out here, guys. Give me 1 second. This. Okay. Maybe we have to select both of these at the same time. It's only gonna let me. All right, so this is what we're trying to describe. Dark, dank, dimly lit. It's not in good shape. It's not a fancy antique shop. It's got a bunch of just weird shit all over it. So I'm trying to keep this up as well as the other, as well as the Notes app, and it's not really letting me do that for some reason. Let me see. Anytime I hit the screen sharing, it like cancels out the second one, but it won't let me screen share 2 different windows. Okay, whatever. You guys know what that looks like. We will just bring back the Notes app. I'll try and figure that out for next time. All right, so dark, dimly lit, and what we can do actually is, I'll just put this up right here. All right, dark, dimly lit antique shop. Let's say full of curiosities. Full of curiosities and curiosities, taxidermy, and dimly lit, dank, dusty. I want to put descriptors in here because what this is going to do is, as I'm writing the script, it's going to help me just, remember essentially like my train of thought or what I want things to look like. So everybody's outlining process is different. This is really mine right here. So I'm just basically doing a couple of beats, and when I go through, I'm gonna make more sections underneath these that may have more descriptions of what's actually going on. Like young couple need to furnish their first apartment/house, and underneath that, couple is riding in car. Character Alex is driving, and character Emily is in the passenger seat, or whatever I decide to name these people, and they're having a discussion about furnishing their apartment. And then they drive down, let's say, an old part of town, and they realize that this is the last antique shop they haven't looked at, you know, and then in this beat here, the only antique shop in town, question mark, maybe one of them says that, or maybe the last antique shop. Last antique shop to look at. And that may just be too cliche. Maybe it's maybe somebody recommended this antique shop. So, like I said, it's important to get these thoughts down, and then go through and just sort of let those ideas stew and just think about them. And then if you want to make changes, you can obviously change them on your second draft of the script, or change them even on the first draft. As you're looking at your outline and you're writing your first draft, you can change these things. So none of this is, you know, set in stone. This is more or less just taking that concept, putting that concept on a document, and then going back, looking at the concept, reading it through, and seeing if it makes sense or if you can come up with better ideas as you go. Um, and then again, you're going to change it through your first draft and your second draft, especially when you get in the writing flow. Things are always going to change. So let's see here. So the couple entered the dusty, dank, dimly lit antique shop full of curiosities, taxidermy, and we'll say old wooden furnishings. Sounds like an antique shop. I go to a lot of them. Let me see. One of the characters is immediately turned off by the shop and wants to leave. The other one is intrigued and nearly begs to stay and look around. Mentions they can probably get a deal here. Okay, so the antique shop appears to be empty. Music sucks. Holy crap. I gotta do something about this. Hold on. Maybe we'll go back to this ambient stuff, assuming it plays. I guess that's better. I don't know. That's pretty terrible too, but it'll work for now. All right, so the antique shop appears to be empty. No shopkeeper in sight. This is important because I don't want the shopkeeper guy to be like supernatural, but I don't want him to be just an ordinary guy. You know, I want there to be some sort of eeriness to him. So I'm thinking, as I'm writing this outline, maybe as they're looking, you know, they sort of kind of split apart a little bit. Maybe the characters, the female character goes this way, the male character goes this way. And while the male character is bent over looking at something, all of a sudden he stands up, and boom, the shopkeeper's right behind him. You know, that's just like your classic sort of jump scare. Let's see. Antique shop, no shopkeeper in sight. The couple begins to look around. They split ways. Alright, so they split ways, going two different directions. Again, looking through the mounds of, let's say, curiosities and we'll call them antiques, but some of it's gonna be like if you look at this picture on the top left here, of the antique dealer. I went into an antique shop recently, me and my wife, and the owner had died. So what happened was the owner died, and they were having a cleaning out of the antique shop. So the owner had died and the shop had stayed shut for like 3 or 4 years. And a business came in, bought his building, but they needed to clear it out. So they hired this guy to go in and essentially like run a cleaning out cell. So what they did is they allowed people to go in there and just search through and rummage through the antique shop to take and buy anything that they wanted. Now, when me and my wife went in there, uh, one side of the antique shop, it was probably, I don't know, let's say 12-foot wide, the shop. So it wasn't very big on one side, and then you would enter through a doorway, and it was like another 12-foot wide shop on the other side. So he had an upstairs, he had a downstairs. And there was just this little narrow passageway that you had to squeeze through because he had just so much crap stacked floor to ceiling. And that was just in the main side of the shop. When you went through the doorway to go to the other side of his shop, there was stuff stacked probably 3 foot high on the ground that you had to step up onto and you had to walk across to get from one end of the shop to the other to just look at different things on the shelves. And, if you're brave enough to sort of dig through the stuff that you're standing on, that stuff was, I don't know, like a lot of clothes and like suitcases and like old radios and stuff like that. But you had to walk across it to get to the other stuff. And then when you went upstairs, this guy, he had a lot of old VHS, and he had like a whole lot of old DVDs and old like cassettes and stuff. He had some really cool stuff, but really nothing that we ended up finding that we wanted. But when you went upstairs, like he lived above the antique shop, so his like bedroom was in there, and then there was also like a hair salon business up there at one time that was connected to everything. So it was really, really weird. But uh, so what I'm trying to say is some of these antique shops aren't nice and prim and full of like priceless antiques. A lot of them are antique shops, but they're full of junk. They're full of just weird curiosities like taxidermy that's done pretty poorly, or just like stuff like you see in this picture here where it's just dirty, and then it's just like old tools and just weird shit all over the place, like bird cages and stuff that's not like, you know, of really any value. So when people think of antique shops, a lot of people think of, priceless artifacts, or like, expensive vases and nice, framed paintings, but they're not all like that. A lot of them, especially where I live in the southern United States, look like this. You go in, they're just dirty and nasty, and it's just really somebody's basement, essentially. They've just been collecting stuff for years and years and years, and just hoping somebody comes in there and buys something once a week. So that's the type of antique shop that we're talking about here. So let's bring that image back up. All right, so they begin looking through the mounds of curiosities and antiques, slowly realizing how odd the place is. They are finding, let's say, bone saws. You actually do find a lot of bone saws at antique shops. It's weird. And old, like, medical devices. Say bone saws. Old newspaper clippings of crimes. Of crimes. Say bones in general. You're gonna have some bones just scattered about. So my wife and I, we collect antiques, we collect oddities. So when you go through our house, we have these curio cabinets, and the curio cabinets can have anything from like wet specimens of pig fetuses or um, like I said, old antique and vintage medical devices. Let me see, taxidermied animals, uh, bones that we find when we're out in the woods, like whether it's from a deer or a fox or whatever, weird insects, just all kinds of stuff. So we have three curiosity cabinets in our house, and they're just packed full of stuff. And so when we go to places like this, we're always looking for stuff. Most recently, my wife got a turtle shell, like not like one that's hollow on the inside, but like it has the full bottom, and I assume on the inside still pieces of the turtle. And it's just things like that. So there's always really weird antique shops, and we got it from an antique shop. The antique shop up the road has like a human femur in it. The guy has a human skull. So you can get weird stuff. It's not really outrageous to go to a place like this and find that kind of stuff. So, um, finding bone saws, old newspaper clippings of crimes. Spelling's not too important here, guys, as you're doing this. I'm not too worried about it. As we're going through and doing our second draft, that's when we want to nail down spelling, because when you do an outline, you do your first draft, you're sort of just like vomiting on the page, right? You're getting all your ideas out there. Old newspapers, clippings of crimes, bones in general, old tools. All right, so we'll call him the husband right now. I don't know if it's going to be two men as the main characters, two women, a man and a woman, husband or boyfriend and girlfriend. I'm not sure. We can figure that out. So we'll just say, as the husband is looking let's say, is looking at something that catches his eye under a table. So he's going to be squatted down under a table. He is startled by the shopkeep. We're actually going to change this to the wife or the female character or the other character, because I want her to shriek. And when she shrieks, the husband comes running from his side of the antique shop over to see if she's okay. And I think that will make for a good little jump scare. As the wife is looking at something that catches her eye under a table, she is startled by the shopkeep. Standing right behind her. She shrieks. The husband and rushes over to see what's wrong. Okay, so the husband rushes over to see what's wrong, and this is where the shopkeep introduces himself. Introduces himself, finds out furniture for their place, and he offers help them. At first, the couple declines. But he mentions to give them a good deal. A going out of business. He's having a going out of business sale. Say retirement sale. This is where so the shopkeep begins to tell his story. So right here is where the shopkeep will begin to sort of start talking about a little bit about his past, or maybe why he's having a retirement sale. Like, hey, I've been at this place for 75 years. My wife died 4 winters ago, and it's time for me to move on. He's being just very cryptic. Begins to tell a story very is cryptically a word? Cryptically, it is a word. Very cryptically. So he's sort of talking like things are finite for him. Begins to tell a story very cryptically. This is as he's walking. As he walks through his shop. Points to a portrait of his wife. I think this is going to be important. Maybe not, but I'm throwing that idea out there, so it's out there. And then as he is walking, he picks up random things, random items, and begins to tell the couple about them. All right, so here's where we figure out how do we want to start telling our stories, right? So do we want to start telling our stories through him picking up random items, and that's how the stories start? So if we know that we're not going to use the film The Butcher, which, like I said, I'm like 50% sure I'm not going to use it. But if we were going to use the film The Butcher, maybe he picks up a little jar of teeth, because one of my characters in that film finds some teeth in a fireplace. So he could pick up a little jar of teeth, or maybe the wife could pick them up and she could look at him and she would be like, hey, Mr. So-and-so, because he's going to introduce himself before this. Like, he'll have a name. Hey, whatever, like, why do you have teeth? He'll be like, well, that's interesting. I acquired these human teeth through this XYZ, and maybe it was a famous story in the area. Maybe it was a famous crime. And they'll be like, are you talking about the Butcher of Burttown? And he'll be like, yeah, so you know the story. And they'll be like, and he'll be like, well, I'm going to tell you. I'll tell you the story. And so he begins the story of the Butcher of Burttown. And when he starts telling it, that's when the movie starts playing. So Simon, come here, Simon. Let me show you guys Simon if you don't know Simon. Come here. Oh, so this is Simon. He's the one making all the noise, knocking stuff over there. So this is the Beast Boy Simon right here. So maybe he starts telling them the story of the Butcher of Burttown. And maybe it's the teeth, maybe it's the chainsaw, maybe the wife is like, hey, blah, 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 whatever his name is. Let's call him Alex. Hey, Alex, you're going to need a chainsaw for some of those trees that are on our property. Some of them got to come down. So he goes over and he picks up the chainsaw. He's like, "Yeah, you're right. Like, how much do you want for this chainsaw?" And the shopkeep can maybe be like, "What's it worth to you?" You know? And is it worth an arm and a leg? And then the guy kinda nervously is like, "Uh-huh," like, "What do you talk about?" He's like, "Let me tell you a story about that very chainsaw." And then he starts to tell him about the story about the butcher, and very, schlocky B movie, of course, the guy loses his arm in the butcher, right? Um, so that's a way that you can segue into that story. And then, as they're going around the shop, they're finding different things that link to the different stories. So I got to figure out if I'm going to keep the butcher in here. And if not, then it won't be a chainsaw or it won't be teeth. I'm just got to find a way to tie each story into this main story here. So the takeaway of this wraparound story is not only to introduce the stories, but it's going to be a story in itself, right? So I don't want the necessarily for the couple to die. Now, the way that this would typically play out is or the way that this could play out, but I can't do it because it was in another anthology horror film that I saw. I can't remember what it was called, but, this girl, she goes to, apply for a job as a mortician's assistant at a funeral home. And then the funeral home director, he's the one that starts talking about the stories. And when he does, at the very end, he basically traps this girl uh, in the funeral home, and then she's now the funeral home director. And like you have to stay locked in the funeral home or something for so many years. I can't remember I think it was on Netflix or it might have been on Shutter. It was a solid anthology. Can't remember what it was called though. I watched so much shit. I can't remember what this one was called. Anyhow, so it would be amazing if like they are now the antique shop owners, you know, but I don't want to bite off that so hard, even though my stories are going to be completely different. So I need to figure out what am I going to do with the couple? Like, do they take one of these items home and then that's the beginning of their story? And then, like, let's say we write this anthology, nothing happens to the couple, right? They just take these items home and we see them taking certain things home that were, you know, from our films. Like maybe they take like a Halloween costume home, and the Halloween costume is from the story with the three kids that go out on Halloween. They take the Halloween costume home, and maybe they have a young kid. They give it to their kid, um, and then maybe that begins an entirely different movie that we write in the future. So let's talk about the movie Terrifier. If you're a horror film fan, then you know about Terrifier. Terrifier came out of an anthology series called All Hallows Eve, and it was just an entry in that film. I'm pretty sure that's where it came out of. It was an entry in that anthology, and then the Terrifier character Art the Clown came out of that and had his own movie. You gotta get down, Simon. Came out of that, and he had his own movie. So um, that could potentially be how this goes, right? So we could have this anthology, and the main story in the future turns into, a full-fledged movie, or a character in one of our three films gets their own spin-off movie at some point. So, um, the reason I'm looking at things like this is because this anthology is not my only project. It's not going to be the only thing I work on. Um, Years and years ago, when my horror film production company, Black Mass Film, started, we had the idea of starting essentially how you had the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We wanted to have a horror cinematic universe. And it's sort of, I guess, what like the American Horror Story guys are doing, how they sort of use all the same people and they link a lot of their stories together. Um, we want to do something similar to that, right? Or I want to do something similar to that now. And I really want to have essentially this world where all of these horror characters exist and sometimes their paths cross. So it wouldn't be a bad thing to maybe take this husband wife and figure out something extra about them, and maybe 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 they're not trying to furnish their apartment. Maybe there's some of those people that collect, um, they call them death dealers. I don't know if you've ever heard of this term, but they call them death dealers, and they collect, like, serial killer memorabilia. So maybe they're there looking for the chainsaw from the butcher, or maybe they're there looking for, a costume that one of these kids wore on Halloween in 1986, where he accidentally killed his friend. That might make it a little bit more interesting. And somehow they found out that this antique shop has it, and that's why they decided to go to this antique shop. What do you guys think about that idea? Do you think that's better? A little less maybe corny than the furnishing of the apartment, or do you think that we should just keep them straight and narrow, um, straight and narrow couple, like that is trying to furnish an apartment? I'll tell you what, I'll put slash up here in our notes, death dealers, and I'll toy around with that idea and I'll think about it because I definitely want them to have their own story, and I want it to be something a little more than just, hey, we're trying to furnish an apartment, because I want to give them a more interesting backstory, and I would like to leave it open to potentially maybe write a story on them later on. Anybody have any thoughts on that or any feedback surrounding that? I'm thinking about the idea now, and I think I kind of like that. I think that's interesting. Let me see. I think that's the term they use for those people. Let's look it up. If you look up Death Dealer, it's something in Underworld Wiki. Maybe that was just the name of the documentary I watched. It was called Death Dealers. Death Dealers Co. Let's see here. Death Dealers, let's see, serial killer merch. Okay, well, I don't know. I think I watched a documentary where they were calling them death dealers, and it was these guys that they would write serial killers, and they would get art from them, you know, out of prison, or they would just, find things that they use that people have, like, and then they would put it in their own personal museum, and they would either resell it and people would buy that stuff for a lot of money, which to me is absolutely ridiculous. I don't think, even though I love horror, I don't think that serial killer merch and serial killer memorabilia or items like that are of any sort of significance to me in my life. But it's interesting that some people put value on that. So maybe these guys are death dealers. So maybe they're not your straight and narrow couple. Something to think about. So as let's skip down back to where we were. Skip back to writing here. So as he's walking, he picks up some random items and begins to tell the couple about them. Um, or Or so here's the fun part about outlining and conceptualizing and brainstorming. Maybe in the beginning, right, you think this couple is straight and narrow, right? So you think the couple is straight and narrow when they first enter. You think they're just, because they're dressed nice, they're dressed very like, um, I don't know, very plain, very Banana Republic, right? And they're talking to each other like, very articulate. And when they show up there, you're like, okay, this is probably not going to be good for this couple that is going into this weird antique shop. And you don't know that they're sort of weird. You don't know that they're death dealers or that they have some sort of perverse narrative. And as they go in and they start talking to the shopkeeper, right? You think he's the weird one at first. You think he's a weird guy. And then you start understanding that this couple's pretty weird too, because he's showing them just like antiques, right? He's like, hey, I've got this 19th century curio cabinet over here. Isn't it amazing? And the husband can be like, do you have anything that, may have caused somebody great sorrow? Or, he's just like trying to dig deeper. Like, do you have anything that, may have been used in an accident? And the antique shop owner is like, like sort of like starting to understand that they're equally as perverse, or that, okay, well, these are the right people he's been waiting for to come in his shop, because maybe the antique owner has his own narrative. Maybe he is trying to rid the world of perverse individuals, evil, or something like that. So when these people come into a shop, he collects all of this serial killer memorabilia, all of this weird stuff to bring these people in. And when people find out he has it and they come into his shop and he realizes those type of people come in, maybe his plan is to kill them. Or maybe his plan is, I don't know. So now I'm just spinning my wheels here, brainstorming more. So this is what happens when you start getting in the thick of writing. So that could be a way that we take this main story. Like I said, this story is something that could be watched on its own, because anthologies, sometimes you just have a presenter, right? So you can go the way with an anthology of just having them present the movies, like John Carpenter's Body Bags. He is he's a medical examiner, and he's working in the morgue, and people are bringing people in body bags in there to him. And as he's walking around, he's basically telling his different stories. But his story, other than just him being a creepy medical examiner, really, there's not a story there. It holds no value. There's not an arc there, really, for his character. There's not really an arc for the Crypt Keeper. There's not really an arc from the Creep Show, Creep Guy. There's not a lot of these anthologies that have a story. But I think it's important for us to take ours and make ours have a story, because that's one of the ways that, this film is going to stand out, is the main story or the wraparound story is going to, it could exist on its own. So, like, granted, you're going to have an arc there. You're going to have some character development, but it's not going to be as much as the other short films do. Because although this is going to have its own story, it's not going to exist. It wouldn't be able to exist without the other three stories, because that's essentially why it exists. If that makes sense. So as he's walking, he picks up some random items, begins to tell the couple about them. The items are typical antiques. Couple seems bored. And oh, we don't want to do that. Let me see. The husband begins to pry and starts asking about particular items he knows are there for sale. So this is where like you would start understanding, okay, so why is the husband, starting to pry? Why is he starting to sort of be pushy and be a jerk? And this is where maybe the the antique the antique dealer would be like, okay, I know who this is. I know what this guy's here for. You know, I understand why he's here. He's here for the reason that I also want him here. So now the antique dealer starts switching his gears, right? He starts thinking, okay, well, how can I get this guy? How can I get him right where I want him? How can I trap him here? Or how can, you know, uh, I lock them in the dungeon underneath my antique store, or whatever the case may be. I got to find out what the ending to this story is, because before today, it was just going to be, okay, he introduces them to these weird stories, they get creeped out and leave. And then maybe they go back and the antique shop's gone. But as you conceptualize and you dig a little bit deeper, right, it can be like, all right, this couple actually has a dark side, and this couple is there, and the couple is there to pick up these items that they know are known serial killer objects of destruction. Um, and they're going to use those objects to either resell, or they're going to use them to kill somebody else and let that blood flow on those objects continue. So whether they try to kill the shopkeep, the guy that you initially thought was real weird, because that's always a good flip, so maybe we have the shopkeep. You initially think, okay, you're watching a horror movie, this couple's going into this place that's kind of weird, kind of haunted, right? And are they going to die in this antique shop? Or are they going to get out alive? you know so that's the flip right there. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh crap, the evil's actually the couple. Now, is the shopkeep going to be able to survive? He talks about his wife that died, so you start kind of like feeling sorry for him. Yeah, she died 4 winters ago, and I've been running this shop ever since. And maybe he starts talking about how he just wishes he could just like I don't know, like take his anger out and just lash out, and I don't know, put violence on the world, to revenge his wife, because maybe she died in some tragic way. Couple asks about it, like wife asks about it, like, oh, how did she die? He can be like, I don't know, drunk driver, or I don't know, medical malpractice, and maybe that's something he has in his office, like medical malpractice. And he's like, I took the doctor's job, sued him, took the doctor's job, and I also have these items from him, and the couple's like intrigued by it. They're like, oh, okay, like that would probably look good in our like in our front room or something. So I think definitely flipping the script, making it to where the couple is evil is the way to go. So definitely gonna have to spin my wheels on that. I think that's the way to go. So husband rushes over to see what's wrong. Shopkeep introduces himself, finds out the couple's looking for furniture for their place, offers to help him. Let's put a question mark here, because we don't know if we're going to go with that storyline yet. Shopkeep begins to tell his story very cryptically as he walks through his shop, points to a portrait of his wife. She's been gone 4 winters. 4 winters now. Left me to run this place alone. So this is a little sad moment, sob moment. Let's make a little note here because I want this to be more of a sad moment for him. Sad moment. As he's walking, he picks up some random items, begins to tell the couple about them. Items are typical antiques. Shopkeep is genuinely trying to help them out. Husband begins to pry and starts asking about particular items he knows they're for sale. Let's see. Items used in murders. And and crimes. We'll put "and crimes" because I'm not sure exactly. Items used in murders and crimes. Shopkeep realizes he has the couple he has been waiting on. He introduces first story by finding an item, by locating an item the husband asked for. So the husband's going to ask for an item. He's like, I know you've got, that jar of teeth. Or I saw online that, you had the chainsaw from, the Burketown butcher murders. Or from Halloween night, I know you have the costume from whatever we're going to name that character, the Dracula mask. I know you have that from Halloween, 1986. And I'll do whatever I have to get it. And he looks at him. He's like, I'll do whatever I have to get it. And, you can tell that the husband means that he will essentially kill the shopkeeper. And I think the shopkeeper understands that as well. And maybe this is where like the shopkeeper starts becoming on guard or gets on guard. So we have that. Shopkeep introduces the first story by finding and locating an item the husband asks for. Husband says he will do whatever it takes. Okay, we'll go back. Hang on. So items not for sale. Items not for sale. Music sucks. Items not for sale. Let's put an asterisk here. Husband visually set. Well, asterisks here because I just want to make sure that as I'm writing, I know to write this in. Visually upset. Says he will do whatever it takes leave to get the item. All right, so this is where Shopkeep introduces the first story to find and locate an item and the husband asks for. So the husband doesn't want it till after he hears the story. As for maybe the wife asks what happened. Item. Wife asks what happened with item. First story starts. Okay. So first story starts. Husband visually upset afterwards. Says he'll do whatever it takes to get the item. So I need to figure out why the husband doesn't just injure the shopkeep right then and there and take the item. So that's what I got to figure out. So anybody have any ideas out there? Feel free, if you're watching this on the replay, throw some comments down. Let me know what you're thinking. Because I think we're going to stream maybe for about 10-15 minutes more. And then we're going to stop with this outline. And then this is something that I'm going to think of over the course of the next week. And then I will probably next Friday sit down, write the script if I don't start over the week, and then we'll continue on what I'm writing on stream next week. So wife asks what happened with item, and then this is where the first story starts. Then as the first story ends, the husband's visually upset and says he will do whatever it takes to get the item. He has to have it. I have to have it. So then I got to find out a way to move on from there with him visually upset, saying he has to have the item, to progressing to the next story. Now, the middle section is probably going to be like less time, because all of this right here, this is probably, if I had to think once this is written, this is probably 10 minutes worth of stuff. So let's just say that our wraparound story is, let's say 10 minutes. We have 3 stories, so 10 minutes here. Because you want to plan this out too, because you don't want to have, I don't want to write this as a movie by itself. You know, that's not going to do me any good. Or like a feature length, because that's not what I'm going for. The whole runtime, yes, as a feature length, but this wraparound story, no. So let's say this is 10 minutes to this point. This first one, let's say we can keep it around the 10 minute, no, say 15 minutes. That right there is 25 minutes. This middle section needs to be about 5 minutes. Let's say 5 minutes until the next story starts. The next story needs to be no greater than 15 minutes. And then we'll do another 5 minutes. And then let's say another 15. And then we need to wrap up this story. So we'll say another 10. So you're looking at 20, 25, 40, 50, 60. You're looking at like an hour and 15, an hour and 20 minutes. That's if we can keep each story in each section in these time constraints. Story 2, section 2, story 3, and we're gonna say ending. This is where we'll get your conclusion. You know, this is where you'll get everything wrapped up for the main story in the last 10 minutes. So I think this would be a good runtime. We have the first 10 minutes written. And even if this first little bit is 15 minutes, that's fine. Because if this turns to 15 and the first story is 15 here, it won't matter so much. So when you look at this, like I said, this whole top portion that we wrote will probably be about 10 or 15 minutes of film time. I would like to keep it around 10 minutes. First story starts 15 minutes after this begins. I have a cat over here going crazy. And then you have the first story, it's 15 minutes. And then you have your second part of our wraparound story. It's 5 minutes long. Your second story's got a runtime of about 15 minutes. Then you have another 5-minute section of this story here. Then you have a 15-minute story, which is story 3. And then you have, the ending part of our main story, this one, which is going to take about 10 minutes or so. That's just random, basic, my thought process. So we just got to figure out, as we're writing, we may make each section a little shorter, a little longer. And of course, as you film stuff, it may be a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, but ideally this is what I would like to keep it as. So this is what I'm trying to use, or what I'm trying to go by as a guide. So I think this would be a good runtime. So I think we got this first section outlined. And I think if we go through and we write this part of the script next Friday, and we get the first draft of this done, I think this would be a success. Because after we do this, we may need to need to figure out what story we're going to write before we move into the second part of our wraparound story. So I got to figure out which story we want to go for. Give me just a minute. All right, I'm back. So, I don't know. These outlining sessions, these writing sessions, how do you guys feel about these? Do you feel like they are, interesting? Do you feel like these are going to give you any value? Because they're honestly just what I would be doing if I wasn't live streaming. I probably would get a little bit more done because I wouldn't be talking. But I think all things considered, that if I saw, somebody writing on a stream, I would want to tune in and I'd want to check things out, not just because I'm interested in screenwriting, but because I'm interested in filmmaking in general. And who knows where these films will go. I hope that when we complete them, I hope you guys that are watching these and following along feel a sense of community with it. I hope that you guys feel like you were part of it, or you saw it being made, or if you're showing up, you helped contribute some of these ideas, right? So when you see this film either online or you see it on a streaming service, you can be like, oh man, I remember when he was writing that, I was there, and I told him that, the couple, they should be death dealers. They don't need to be just a straight and narrow couple. They need to actually be there to rob the shopkeep. And he went with my idea. I came up with that idea. And if you're a legit contributor, I will definitely put you in the credits on what we're making. So I just need that engagement. So if you're here week after week and you're throwing out ideas, you'll definitely get a credit in the film or getting a credit on IMDb or both. Like I said, and if you're in the area and you want to be part of the cast or the crew, an extra, if you don't really have acting chops, you could do that. Or if you are pretty decent at acting, let me know. You could be potentially one of the main characters in one of these four films. I say four because you have the three stories and you have the wraparound. So I'll be casting quite a bit of people. So, um, or if you just want to be a crew member, I always need hands on set. So, yeah, so feel free to throw out ideas if you have them. If you want to be a legit contributor, then you can hit me up, and you can we can work something out where it's actually a real collaboration. What's up, Chuck? How you doing? Better late than never. It's a um good thing for replays. Good thing for replays. But you came right around the end, so I mean, I'm gonna hang out for just a little bit longer. If you're just showing up, then essentially what we have here is we have a outline. So we have an outline all the way until our first story starts. So the way an outline works is people do it differently. I do just a idea outline. I just throw down ideas or beats for the script, and there's no attention to spelling. There's no attention to punctuation or grammar. It is literally just vomiting on the page and letting those ideas flow. So, um, we'll go over these pretty quick. I'll talk back through this just to bring you up to speed, Chuck, and anybody that's just now tuning in or anybody that just wants a full recap. So, um, we have our wraparound story. We have the main story that introduces the other three stories. So, unsure at this point, since we talked last Friday, if I want to use the butcher in this anthology. It might be a lot better for me and a lot better just all around and creatively if I can just write three new films for this anthology. Now, I could use the butcher, no problem there. I just haven't really decided. It's something I need to decide on pretty quick. So, the wraparound story, though, we're gonna have this guy here, our antique shop guy. Let me see if I can't share this again one more time. Let me bring this up here. All right, so this guy here, our antique shop owner, this is what he looks like. This is the vibe we're going for. So you have this vibe and you have the thumbnail for this live stream, which is right. Let me bring it up here because that antique shop owner looks a little bit different and he looks pretty solid. I'm just giving you visuals here. That's why I'm bringing this stuff back up. Um, so let me bring him over here real quick. I gotta exit out some of these windows. I don't think I can live stream or share two different screens at the same time. I don't know what's up with it. I gotta figure it out. Like I said, I've got to gotta play with it a little bit more. And as time goes, I'll get a little bit quicker on it. So you also have this guy here, which I kind of like him as well. That's why I put him in the thumbnail. This guy looks pretty awesome, and I sort of like his vibe. Again, this is just AI art from Midjourney. I fed it some prompts, and I sort of fed it the prompts that I would use to describe the antique shop, right? And it fed this out to me, and then I just made it a thumbnail in Photoshop. So You have this antique dealer, and he's in town, or he has a shop in town, and he more or less is a creepy old eerie guy. But but what we've come up with is maybe he's creepy and he's eerie, but he's actually not dangerous. So, um, here's what we have thus far. So we're gonna recap. So a young couple, they need to furnish their first apartment slash house. So I thought maybe this is why they're going to the antique store. Maybe they're looking for furniture and they're on a budget. They don't want to buy new furniture, they want old furniture. They've decided to look at antique shops. The only antique shop in town is this one that they're going to. Or perhaps it's the last antique shop in town that they're going to look at because maybe they've checked all the other ones and they couldn't find a deal or they couldn't find what they're looking for. So, um, they've decided to go to this one. Uh, so the couple, they enter the dusty, dank, dimly lit antique shop full of curiosities, taxidermy, and old wooded furnishings. One of the character is immediately turned off by the shop and wants to leave. The other one is intrigued and nearly begs to stay and look around, mentions they probably can get a good deal here. The antique shop appears to be empty. There is no shopkeeper in sight. The couple begins to look around. They split ways, going two different directions, and they begin looking through the mounds of curiosities and antiques, slowly realizing how odd the place is. They're finding bone saws, old newspaper clippings of crimes, human bones in general, and old tools. As the wife is looking at something that catches her eye under a table, she is startled by the shopkeeper standing right behind her. So, this is going to be our jump scare. She shrieks, the husband rushes over to see what's wrong, and the shopkeep introduces himself. Finds out the couple's looking for furniture for their first place, and he offers to help them. Question mark, because I don't know if we're gonna go with this storyline. I'll explain in a minute. Um, at first, the couple declines, but he mentions to give them a good deal. He's having a retirement sale. The shopkeeper begins to tell his story very cryptically as he walks through his shop, points to a portrait of his wife hanging on the wall, and says, "She's been gone 4 winters now. She left me to run this place alone." This is a sad moment. You can kind of tell the shopkeeper is sad. Um, as he's walking, he picks up some random items, begins to tell the couple about them. The items are typical antiques. The shopkeeper is genuinely trying to help them out. The husband begins to pry and starts asking about particular items that he knows are there in the shop for sale, items used in murders and crimes. Shopkeep realizes he has the couple he has been waiting on. The shopkeep introduces the first story by finding and locating an item the husband asked for, but the item's not for sale, is what the shopkeep says. And the wife asks, "What do you mean not for sale? What happened with that item? Why won't you sell it to us?" And this is how the first story is introduced. And then when the first story ends, the husband is visually upset. He's kind of angry, says he will do whatever it takes to get that item. He has to have it. So, where this is going is um I'm thinking that Chuck, since you're here, let's throw some ideas around real quick. So I'm thinking that what's instead of having the couple be your straight and narrow individuals like I originally planned and having the shopkeeper be uh this sort of eerie guy, I'm thinking of the couple presenting themselves as this nice and straight and narrow couple. Like, this is what you would see if you weren't part of this writing process, if you were watching this film for the first time. They're very, like, very Banana Republic, very articulate. They seem just like, "Hey, we're there to get some antiques, and we're trying to furnish a place with it." But I was explaining earlier that there's these people that are called death dealers, and death dealers are people that collect serial killer memorabilia, serial killer merch, items that were used in like heinous crimes and murders and homicides and stuff like that. There's people out there that collect that stuff, and they collect it because it either brings them personal satisfaction to have in their collection, or they buy it and they flip it and resell it. So So what they do is they're there to actually they found out maybe online or they found out through a source that this shopkeep, this antique dealer, right? He has some of these death items, right? So like let's say we went with the story of the butcher. Let's say maybe he has a jar of the teeth of Mikey, the guy that gets his arm cut off. Or maybe he has Mikey's boots or something like that. Maybe he has the chainsaw, that the butcher used, and the husband sees it and he's like, he knows what it is, but he doesn't want the shopkeep to know that he knows what it is. So they have this little back and forth, and he's like, and the shopkeeper's like, the husband's like, well, how much do you want for that chainsaw? And he's like, you know, what if I told you wanted an arm and a leg for it? And then the husband's like, knows that he knows, and he can be like, well, $500 do? And then the wife is like, why do you want to pay so much for that old chainsaw? And then they go back and forth, and hang on 1 minute. And trying to figure out what Simon's barking about. And they go back and forth, and then the wife is like, okay, so why is this particular item so special? And this is how the first story starts, right? And then she finds out, oh, that's the chainsaw from the Burketown Butcher murders. And then the story plays out. And then after the story of the butcher, he's like, oh, well, the chainsaw's not for sale. And then this angers the husband, this angers him, and he's like, I'll do anything for it. Like, I have to have this item. And then this is when the shopkeep realizes that, okay, well, these people are here for these darker items I have. And then I'm trying to figure out how I want that to end, because these people sort of become, the visitors to the antique store sort of become more pushy. They sort of become more revealing of their characters, and maybe they murder the shopkeep in the end, right? Or maybe they take some items home, and those items curse these individuals somehow. Because like I was saying, Chuck, so with these anthologies, right, you have two different ways they're normally shot. Normally, there is not much of a story for your main story. It is normally just a presenter saying, hey, like Tales from the Crypt Keeper, like, he's like basically like, I've got a tale for you and blah, 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 blah. Sometimes they talk about a moral of the story, right? And then they tell the story, or the story plays. And then after the story's over, they tell like the moral of the story or whatever, and then they play the next story. Every once in a while, you get these anthologies where the wraparound story actually has a beginning, middle, and end. The characters have a character arc, and there's a resolution in the story, right? There's a climax, there's a conclusion that wraps everything up. And I think that's the way that I want to go, because I think if I tell the wraparound story the correct way, it will do a better job at presenting each story. And if I wanted to in the future, I could take either the story of the shopkeeper, or I could take the story of the death-dealing couple and make another film about them. So, Chuck, you may remember, me and Chuck have been friends for a while, so Chuck may remember that when I started Black Mass Films, my indie horror production company, recapping this real quick, I wanted to do a horror cinematic universe, sort of like Marvel has. And that's sort of one thing that I want to do. I want to do here is I want to do a horror cinematic universe. So I think going forward, being able to take sections of these stories and bring some of these characters back, or having some of these characters cross paths with new characters and having callbacks to certain films would be really interesting to anybody that follows a production or a film that I make. So I think leaving some of these stories open, or open enough to where the story can be retold or called back upon, it would be really interesting for anybody that follows my films. Um, yeah, so definitely could have them from out of state. So Chuck says, yeah, maybe have them from out of state. And like we talked a little bit um in the last stream is have them come in from out of state. Maybe they don't know about this particular antique shop, or maybe like I said, they found through a source, through an eBay listing that, man, these items are for sale. Chainsaw, jar of teeth, the costume that Dracula has on the Halloween story we're gonna write. Um, it could be like, that mask. I have to have that Dracula mask. Where's it at? And the shopkeep has it under a bunch of stuff, and he's like, "This mask here from the murders of blah 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 from the Halloween of 1986." And like he talks about the mask, and that's how that story is presented. Like it begins, that story starts. Um, so there's that route. And then let's say if we have the witch story that we're going to write, the Appalachian witch story, there'll be something, a significance from that story in the antique shop. And the couple knows it's there. And they're like, the Appalachian witch story, or the Appalachian witch trials, or Appalachian witch murder, or the disappearance of this couple, North Carolina, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it's, um, I don't know. Once we write the story, we'll find an object that we can place in the antique shop that we'll be able to use as like the anchor for that story. And maybe the shopkeep won't sell any of these items, right? Maybe he's keeping them for some particular reason, right? Maybe it's a superstition. Maybe he believes that if he sells them, he'll die. Maybe because last time they sold a murder object, his wife died. Maybe that's his belief. And so since he won't sell them, the husband gets enraged and the husband kills him. And I don't mean like some sort of crazy horror kill. I mean he just like straight up pulls out a gun and shoots him in the head. So then now that's how that story would end. The wife doesn't know what to do because the wife is not as crazy as the husband. She's freaking out. He grabs her, throws her in the car, and they speed off. And that's the end of the anthology, right? Or maybe there's something more supernatural that we can do. Um, it just depends, right? So this is the fun part about writing is there is no wrong way. There's million and one different ways you can go. You just have to figure out, okay, where do I want to take this idea? And there's a bunch of different ways we can go, and we'll figure it out. But I think what is important that we accomplish tonight is getting all of this done right here. So we got all of this done until the first story. So all we have to do now between now and the next time I sit down to write is figure out if I want to go with the death dealer story of the couple. And I think that's what I want to do. I think we're going to have them be this, at first look, they're a straight and narrow couple, but they actually have perverse and an evil narrative, right? Like an evil narrative, an evil just mindset, but you don't know it. You can't tell it from the outside until the story starts developing. And then I just have to figure out what our first story is going to be. And then we need to start writing that. So all of this right here, I can go ahead and probably write the script on. And we may work on this a little bit, throughout the week. And then we'll come back on Friday. And if I haven't written through the week, Tuesday through Friday, we'll hop in and we'll just start hammering out the script. And if I have written anything, I'll just talk about what I have written, and then we'll just pick up from there and we'll just continue writing. Like I said, I am using Fountain. Actually, no, I was going to use Fountain. I've decided to use Writer Duet, which is a script writing software. I'm moving away from Celltex because Celltex is sort of price gouging their customers right now. Not a huge fan of that. So moving over to another screenwriting software. So, I'll also give you guys a little bit of my review on that. I used Writer Duet a long time ago, and I really liked it. Um, but it's been a couple years, so I'm not sure if I'm still gonna like it or not. So we'll see how that goes. Let's see. Other than that, it appears to me, Chuck, since you're out there watching in real time, has the video quality increased at all? I'm not sure. I can't really tell, really, from where I'm monitoring. Um, I hooked everything I can hook up on, and I am doing right now all that I can do with what my internet provider's provided me with. So, um, maybe it is just a high usage situation in my area, because what I've got here, crisp and clean and clear and low latency. Um, what I'm seeing here still looks like a 720 feed and not an HD feed, like I'm supposed to have. So we'll see. Maybe it's just the time and the amount of usage that is being utilized in my neighborhood. So maybe there's a better time for me to actually uh to live stream. I don't know. If 10:30 is a little late, if a lot of people can't tune in at 10:30, that's understandable. I could probably do it earlier in the day. I just figured most people are winding down at this time and sort of just laying around and have some downtime. So I figured that 10:30 was a good time. But um, if 10:30 is not the right time, drop it in the comments and we can do a little something else. So that's basically it for today's live stream. I appreciate you, Chuck. Better late than never, coming in and watching. Anybody that's tuned in and watched, I know a couple people, popped in and have left and popped back in. So definitely appreciate any and everybody that watched. Like I said, as time goes on, it'll get a little bit more interesting because we'll get a little bit more into the weeds of writing, and I'll have some more understanding of the live streaming, I guess, software, some of the live streaming equipment, to where, it's a little more fluid. I'm still trying to figure it out. So I definitely can light a little bit more. Chuck, good point. Maybe that'll help out a little bit. I mean, like I said, this is normally how I would shoot like a YouTube talking head video, but maybe live streaming's a little different. Because like I said, here, I wish you guys could see this. Here it's crisp. But maybe I need to light it a little bit better for live streaming reasons. So we'll definitely crank the lighting up next week and see what that looks like. But so next Friday, if enough people comment and let me know that I need to change the time, I will change the time and we'll live stream a little bit earlier. But if not, then we'll probably just keep with 10:30. Just like I said, let me know whether you're letting me know on the replay or let me know here on the streams. I'll have some more artwork to show you guys next live stream. We're gonna figure out this music situation, because this AI music that is included with the software is just garbage. I don't know if y'all can hear that. Can you hear the music a little bit? So there's like a couple different genres of music here, and would it have killed them to put some eerie music in here? I don't know if it would have or not. I really don't want like future pop music playing as I'm writing a horror story. So there definitely needs to be some music though. Yeah, so figuring this out. So just bear with me. The quality is only going to get better. The transitioning of all the screens are going to get better. I'm just really having to dive in and learn live streaming, because it is a new skill set for me. And you know, I will bring on guests as well. So Chuck, like if you want to come in and talk about whatever and hang out as a guest, and just spitball some ideas, um, hang in there. That goes for anybody else that just wants to hop on and, talk a little bit about horror movies in maybe the first section before we start writing. Definitely game for that. Love good conversation, so that's always an option. But I will be making some assets for this live stream and all of that good stuff over the course of the week. So, um, definitely looking forward to that. Definitely looking forward to the quality improvement and all that good stuff. The audio. How does the audio sound, like my dialogue with this microphone? Does that sound pretty decent? Like I said, I'm trying to figure all this stuff out, whether or not I need to use a different mic, because I have tons of different mics here in the studio. I just like where this one sits on this boom arm here. I have podcasting mics and stuff like that I can use. I'm actually pointing down here because I have one sitting under my desk in case I needed to switch on a whim here. All right, this music has to change. Well, that about sums it up. Like I said, guys, thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for watching the replay if you did. These are, I know, sort of long. We're actually going on, man, an hour and 45 minutes. I really want to probably start keeping these around an hour, especially when we start writing. It'll get a little bit tighter, maybe an hour and a half max if I have guests on and we start just spitballing and talking. But yeah, I definitely want to make these a little shorter, and I don't want to ramble as much. So let me know about what you think of this outline. Looks like this is heading in the right way? I mean, it does to me. I think we nailed down some pretty important story plot points here, and I think we are going in the right direction. Now, by next week, we will have the story that we want to tell. Whether we decide to keep the butcher, we'll have the 3 stories. I'll have that nailed down. And I'll also have either started writing on this or with the plans to write it on Friday. So that's basically it, guys. Thanks again for tuning in. And as always, stay rad. Just go shoot. And I'll see you tomorrow if you're a watcher of my YouTube channel. If not, I will see you next Friday for the live stream. So thanks again, and I will see you later. See ya.